Hi guys and welcome to Fandom Newbie. My name is Shruti and today I'm going to be talking about 10 really immersive books. Now, the thing that I really like about these books is the way in which the city or country in which they are set, the way that that city or country is described is so immersive that it really transports you to that particular country. So the way the culture is described, the way that particular city is described, the way the sights, smells, sounds, and even just like things about the food or the people, like just everything about that particular place, the way that it is described is so immersive and so amazing that you feel like you are in that place, if that makes sense. So that's why I want to talk about these books. They are super duper immersive and I have loved them. So without further ado, let's just get started. The first book that I want to talk about is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Now, this book basically is a book about books and authors and stories, and those are the kind of books that I absolutely love. What this book is about is that our main character Daniel basically goes with his dad to this underground library in Barcelona where he discovers a book called The Shadow of the Wind by this author named Julian Carax. Now Daniel, after finishing The Shadow of the Wind, absolutely falls in love with Julian Carax's writing and he wants to read more books by that author. But when he goes to try to find more books written by Julian Carax, he can't find any because he discovers that some mysterious figure has actually been burning all of Julian Carax's books. And so this kind of takes him down on this mystery of trying to figure out who Julian Carax was, because there's also rumors that he kind of disappeared and nobody really knows what happened to him. So who Julian Carax was, why he disappeared, why someone is burning his books, and just it takes him down on this really mysterious path of trying to figure out everything about this author that he has grown to love. This book, like I said, is set in Barcelona, and the way that Barcelona is described in this book is just exquisite. Like, it really transports you to the streets of Barcelona, just like, you know, the different lanes, the houses, the mansions, the way they were back in the 1960s or 70s, I guess. And it just, like, this entire book just transports you to a world of stories and mystery and this beautiful city of Barcelona. So very immersive, really transports you to that world, and absolutely magnificent. The next book that I want to talk about is The Perfect World of Miwako Sumida by Clarissa Guénoun. Now, this book is about this character, Miwako Sumida, who has tragically committed suicide. But the thing is that on the surface, Miwako Sumida's life just seemed absolutely beautiful and perfect and fun, and like nobody would really have guessed that she would commit suicide. So when she does that, this guy who's in love with her and her best friend kind of are in a state of shock, and they go down this journey of trying to figure out why Miwako would do this and like try to figure out more about her life, because they clearly understand that they don't know their friend as well as they thought they did. This book is a really good exploration of mental health in the sense that you really don't know what is actually going on in a person's life, and like it kind of gives the message of how you have to always be sensitive towards people's feelings because you really don't know their struggles. And it also really talks about like Japanese culture and also kind of how that plays into the whole aspect of mental health. So I just feel like overall this is a really interesting exploration of Japanese culture and mental health and a lot of like societal issues. So very interesting book, definitely check it out. The next book that I want to talk about is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. Now, this book is set in Lagos in Nigeria, and it's kind of like a thriller slash family drama. So it's like there's no real mystery in this book because the title kind of reveals who the killer is. But basically what this book is about is that there are two sisters, Ayula and Korede. Ayula is the younger sister, I believe, and Korede is the older one. And Korede is kind of like the person who has held Ayula's life together in a way. Like, she always has this extremely protective feeling towards Ayula. And Ayula is kind of like a brat, but she's also a serial killer, and her victims are basically all the men that she has dated. Now, the twist in the story happens when Ayula actually starts dating, or she falls in love with this man who Korede is madly in love with. And now, like, Korede knows that at some point Ayula is going to murder this man, but she's kind of torn between the feelings of protecting the man she loves versus protecting this sister whom she has always kind of protected. And it's a very, very interesting story. Through the story, I feel like it's also a nice exploration of Nigerian culture and the food and family dynamics and just life in Lagos in general. It does give a pretty good insight into that. Again, super immersive. I highly recommend the audiobook version of My Sister the Serial Killer because it is beautifully narrated. The woman who narrates it is from Nigeria, so she has like the perfect accent, which I feel like makes the story even more immersive. So yeah, definitely check this out. Another really, really amazing book. The next book that I want to talk about is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamli. Now, this book is essentially the love story between two characters, Roya and Bahman, who meet in Tehran in Iran in the 1950s, I think. And basically, the story talks about how they meet, how they fall in love, but also the circumstances, including the political turmoil in Iran, which forces them to stay apart from each other. And that's essentially what the book is about. But what I really loved about this book is just the way that Marjan Kamli has described Tehran, especially like the bazaars of Tehran, the sights, the sounds, the smells of these bazaars, the way she has described Persian food. Like, my mouth was watering when I was reading this book. Like, it is so yummy the way she described the food. You can like almost smell it and you can taste the food that she's described, and it's so immersive. I really loved reading this book. It was a great exploration of Persian culture, I feel, and yeah, a beautiful love story as well. So definitely check it out. The next book that I want to talk about is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. Now, I recently read this book for a video, which I will link up here if you guys haven't checked it out. Go and check it out. I read books written by Nobel Prize winners in literature, and it was a really, really great experience doing that little project for the video. But basically, this is my first Ernest Hemingway book that I have ever read, and this book is set in Cuba. Now, the way that Ernest Hemingway has described this Cuban village and the way that he's described the sea in this book was absolutely beautiful. Essentially, what this book is about is this man named Santiago's his obsessive like desire to catch this huge fish that he discovers in the sea. That's basically it. And I know that sounds really boring, but just the way Ernest Hemingway has described the journey that Santiago goes on in this sea, that is just absolutely beautiful, and it almost reads like a thriller. Like, even though it's just about this man who's trying to catch a fish, the ups and downs that he goes through along that journey are so beautifully captured, and just the way that Ernest Hemingway has described the sea and also the fishes in the sea as their own like characters. I don't know, it's just really, really amazing. The next book that I want to talk about is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. Now, this book is set in England, and more specifically the English countryside. This book is actually about a butler who is like the most proper and the best butler there is in England in the 1940s and 50s. And he's basically at the end of his career of being a butler. And so this book is about him kind of looking back at his life as a butler, and also him kind of reminiscing the old days and thinking about where certain things went wrong in his life and how he might have like acted differently in hindsight, if that makes sense. So it's just about this butler who is reminiscing on his life. And again, I know that sounds really boring, but it is so well done. Firstly, as he's kind of reminiscing about his past, this butler is taking a trip in the English countryside, and the way that that is described is so beautiful. It's so like it really, you feel like you want to be in those charming little towns with the amazing views. Like you really want to visit those places. Beautifully described. And secondly, I feel like it's a really good look at this like really proper and I also, you like really want to visit those places. But I also feel like this book is a really good exploration of English culture and the need to always be proper, or the need to not wear your heart on your sleeves and just always do like the proper thing. Like, you know, what like when people talk about English propriety, especially in Jane Austen novels as well, just the talk about this English propriety, I feel like this is a really good exploration of that as well, and just another stunning, beautifully written book. The next book that I want to talk about is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, this book is set in the US in the 20s during the Jazz Age, and it basically talks about a bunch of rich white people doing very questionable and stupid and not very nice things. Basically, what this book is about is this man named Jay Gatsby, who is a socialite, I guess, in New York in the 1920s, and it talks about his rise to power and how he becomes rich, and also it talks about his unrequited love with this woman named Daisy. But even though this book is just about a whole bunch of white people doing very questionable things, but what I really liked about this book is just the way that the entire jazz era of New York, the way that that is described. So all the extremely extravagant parties and just like rich people doing rich people things and the flowing champagne and like all of that was just really wonderful to read about. It was kind of like Gossip Girl. So if you watched Gossip Girl, this was like Gossip Girl but in the 1920s. Like, it's just a whole big party that's being described in the book, and it's fabulous because like there's descriptions of like the snooty people who live in New York at that time, then like people getting drunk and doing things, and just like it's fun. Overall, a crazy, twisted book filled with very unlikable characters, but set in a really exciting and extravagant backdrop, if that makes sense. The next book that I want to talk about is The Mercies by Kiran Millwood Hargrave. Now, this book is set in a Norwegian village in the 1600s, and basically all the men in this village are fishermen. Now, one day when all of the men are out on the sea fishing, this storm hits them and unfortunately kills all of them. And this leaves the women in the village in a really, really vulnerable position, because this is the 1600s where women didn't really work, or they couldn't really work. So now the women have to kind of figure out how they are going to fend for themselves and how they're going to basically survive without their men's help. These women become really strong and independent, and this causes some people to assume that they are witches, which leads to a witch hunt. And that is just absolutely insane, because this book is actually based on true events that really happened in a Norwegian village during that time. So that just makes this book even more spooky and eerie and just absolutely infuriating. Yeah, again, I feel like it's a really interesting look at just the way society was back then, and the culture of this like fisher village and the women who lived there, and yeah, just like the politics of that time. It's a really, really good exploration of so many themes. Yeah, another very, very engaging but infuriating book that I think all of you should read. The next book that I want to talk about is Clap and You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book is set in two countries, the first being the Dominican Republic and second one the United States. And it talks about two teenage girls living in these two countries and how one tragic incident that happens in their lives kind of links the two of them together. Now, the thing that's really interesting about this book is just the juxtaposition of the life of this girl living in the US versus this girl living in the Dominican Republic, and how they're the same age, The girl living in the US is also of like Dominican background, so they have the same background, but just because they are born in two very different societies and two very different countries, their life is just absolutely different from one another. So it really talks about like how the girl in the US kind of has this life of privilege almost because of where she's born, versus like the struggles of this girl who lives in the Dominican Republic. And I feel like that is so beautifully captured. Yeah, it's just again a really wonderful exploration of cultures and how your upbringing can kind of affect the life that you have, the country that you're born in, the society that you're born in, how that can affect your life. And this book, like Elizabeth Acevedo's other book, The Poet X, which is one of my all-time favorite books in the entire world, this is also written in like spoken word poetry. So it's a story that's told through poetry, and that just makes it absolutely beautiful and emotional. And like again, you can really feel for these characters. Again, like The Poet X, listen to the audiobook version of this book because it is narrated by Elizabeth Acevedo and another woman, but they both do a brilliant job of bringing these characters to life and giving them the voice that they need. So brilliantly narrated audiobook, really well written book, amazing characters. Read this book, it is just amazing. And the last book that I want to talk about is Perfume, The Story of a Murderer by, I forget the author. It's a German author, I feel. Yes, Patrick Susskind? Patrick Susskind. I don't know. Anyway, he's a German author. But basically, this book is super creepy. It's the story of a serial killer who has a very keen sense of smell, and he wants to create the perfect perfume. And the way he decides he wants to create this perfect perfume is basically by murdering virgin women and extracting their scent, and basically making a perfume of mixing the scent of all these women together. It's very creepy and it's very twisted, but it is really an interesting read. This story is set in France, and basically I read this book when I was studying perfumes in France because one of my teachers told me that while this book is really twisted, the method of like extracting perfumes that is described in this book is actually very accurate. And also just the way that Grasse, which is like the place where in France where perfumes were born, the way that Grasse is described and the way that the entire like the whole process of making perfumes is described in this book, that is very accurate. And that is so true because I actually got to visit Grasse when I was living in France, and it's so accurate. The way everything is described in this book is twisted like that. People don't really extract scents off of people's bodies, although there was somewhere in Europe that did that. I don't remember when now. If I do find it, I'll put it up on the screen over here. There were some people who were extracting scents from bodies, but generally in the perfume industry that doesn't happen. But just the methods that he uses to do that are accurate, and the way he's described Grasse, the way that the author has described Grasse and all of this entire perfume world is very accurate. So a very interesting, very twisted, scary, creepy kind of book, but yeah, super engaging. And if you like a good thriller, then definitely check this one out. So yeah, that was my video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a big fat thumbs up. Leave a comment down below letting me know which book you find super immersive. Give me some book suggestions because I definitely want to read more really immersive, engaging stories. So let me know down in the comments below. And of course, do subscribe to my channel for more book related videos. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.